Have you ever been in a crowd and felt completely invisible? Like you could scream your name at the top of your lungs, but no one would even glance your way? Maybe it was at a concert, a busy street, or even your local grocery store during peak hours. That strange, almost sinking feeling of being lost in a crowd, it's more common than you think. But why does it happen? And what does it say about us? Let's start simple. Imagine you're at a party. One of those parties where the music is blasting so loud it feels like your eardrums are tap dancing, and everyone is talking at the same time. You're scanning the room for a familiar face, but everyone seems the same. The smiles blur together, the voices become a single chaotic hum. Suddenly, you realize you don't even know where you are. You're surrounded by people, yet somehow completely alone. Your brain panics, and it whispers, "Wait, who am I again?" It might sound dramatic, but it's basically your brain doing its job. Humans are hardwired to notice patterns, and also to find where we belong in those patterns. When you're in a crowd, all those patterns disappear. Faces blend, voices merge, and your brain loses its anchor point. That anchor point? Usually, it's social connection. Without it, you feel, well, lost. Here's where it gets scientific and kind of fascinating. Studies show that when we're in a crowd, our sense of individuality literally shrinks. Your brain downplays you and ramps up them. That's why you might think, no one sees me, no one notices me. But here's the plot twist. That's not reality. It's your brain playing tricks. It's survival instinct kicking in, back when being invisible in a crowd could actually keep you safe from predators. Except now, it just makes you feel weird in a line at Starbucks. And yet, feeling lost in a crowd isn't all bad. In fact, sometimes it's strangely liberating. Ever notice at a huge concert, you can dance like a maniac, sing off-key at the top of your lungs, and somehow feel completely free? That's because anonymity can be powerful. When no one is watching, you don't have to perform. You can just exist. Weird, right? Being invisible for a little while can feel like a tiny superpower. But let's get real. Feeling lost in a crowd is also linked to something psychologists call social comparison. Basically, when you're surrounded by strangers, your brain automatically starts evaluating. Are they cooler than me? Smarter? More put together? Suddenly, your little human brain decides that navigating a packed subway station is like scaling Mount Everest. And that's why you clutch your coffee like a life raft and pray no one bumps into you. So, what can we do about it? First, remember that everyone else is in the same boat. That stranger who just bumped into you? Yep, probably panicking just as much. Second, find your anchor. It could be a friend, a loved one, or even something small like your music and headphones. That anchor gives your brain a reference point, and suddenly, you're not floating aimlessly anymore. Here's a fun trick. Instead of shrinking back, try expanding. Smile at someone. Make eye contact. Start a tiny conversation. Crazy as it sounds, even one small connection can make you feel fully present in the crowd again. You go from being a faceless blur to someone who exists in the moment. Now, here's something most people don't realize. Feeling lost in a crowd also shows something beautiful about you. It shows that you care. You care about connection, about being seen, about mattering. Because if you didn't, being surrounded by people wouldn't even faze you. That little pang of discomfort, that's your heart reminding you, I want to be noticed. I want to belong. And that's kind of amazing when you think about it. But let's add a twist. Sometimes, being lost can actually teach you something about yourself. When you're anonymous, you can observe the crowd without judgment. You notice little things. A kid laughing hysterically, someone helping an elderly person, a couple holding hands. These moments remind you that even in a crowd, small acts of humanity stand out. You just need to open your eyes. At the end of the day, feeling lost in a crowd is normal. It's a mix of biology, psychology, and a dash of social chaos. The key is not to fight it, but to understand it. Take a deep breath, find your anchor, and remember that even when you feel invisible, you're still very much a part of the world. And sometimes, being invisible is a secret ingredient to noticing the little things, appreciating the big picture, and maybe even finding your own path in the crowd. So next time you're in a sea of people and that weird little sinking feeling hits, don't panic. Smile at someone. Dance a little. Observe quietly. Because being lost in a crowd isn't the end of the story. It's a beginning of seeing yourself and others in a whole new way. And who knows? Maybe that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Have you ever been in a crowded place, maybe a concert, a busy street, or even a packed mall, and suddenly felt completely invisible? Like you could scream your name, but no one would notice? That weird, sinking feeling of being lost in a crowd? Yeah, we've all been there. But why does it happen? Why do we feel so small when surrounded by so many people? Let's start with something simple. Imagine you're at a party. You know, one of those parties where there's music so loud your ears feel like they're under attack, and everyone's talking a little too fast. You try to find someone you know, but everyone looks like a clone of everyone else. Suddenly, you realize you don't even know where you are. You're in the middle of a sea of strangers. Your brain goes, wait, who am I again? Okay, maybe not literally, but kind of. Here's the thing. Humans are wired to notice patterns, and also to notice where we fit in. When you're in a crowd, all those patterns break down. Faces blur together. Voices mash into one giant noise, and your brain struggles to find its anchor point. That anchor point? Usually, it's social connection. When it's missing, we feel lost. And it's not just a mental thing. There's science behind this. Studies show that when we're in a crowd, our sense of individuality can shrink. Our brain literally downplays you and amps up them. That's why you might start thinking, wow, no one sees me. No one cares. Spoiler alert, that's not actually true. It's just your brain tricking you. Now, here's a fun twist. Feeling lost in a crowd isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's freeing. Ever notice how in a huge concert you can sing your heart out, dance like nobody's watching, and somehow feel totally invisible and totally alive? That's because anonymity can give us permission to just be ourselves. Weird, right? Being unseen can feel liberating. But okay, let's bring it back to reality. Feeling lost in a crowd is also connected to something called social comparison. You know, when you look at everyone else and think, wow, everyone seems cooler, more confident, more put together than me. That's your brain's sneaky way of making you feel smaller. And suddenly, your little brain decides that walking into a grocery store at rush hour is basically climbing Everest. So what can we do about it? First, remember, everyone else is fighting the same invisible battles. That stranger bumping into you? Yep, they are probably as flustered as you. Second, find your anchor point, someone you know, a friendly face, even your own music in headphones. Having that tiny island of me in a sea of them makes all the difference. And here's a little trick. Instead of shrinking back, try expanding. Smile, wave, start a small conversation. Crazy as it sounds, being seen, even in a small way, pulls you back into your personal space in the crowd. Suddenly, you're not lost. You're just one of many, but fully you. At the end of the day, feeling lost in a crowd is normal. It's a reminder that our brains crave connection, our hearts crave recognition, and sometimes a little invisibility is just part of life's design. Next time it happens, don't panic. Take a deep breath, find your anchor, and maybe even dance a little, because even in a crowd, you can always stand out in your own way. So, the next time you're in a sea of people, remember, feeling lost isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of noticing how you fit and how, sometimes, being invisible can be your superpower.